Small Business Lending Act. Please help me welcome Representative Jones and Schrader to the stage.
Let me see. Excuse me, Kurt. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you both here. And I kind of want to set the stage a little bit by sharing what happened in Montana, very briefly, I promise. Those of you that know I can chat, so I'll be brief. In 2012, Senator John Tester faced a challenge from our only Congressman, Denny Rehberg. And we got into that race and sent out partisan communications to a good number of credit union households. He won that race by less than 4%. And it was wonderful. Probably one of the most exciting things of my career was when the next time we were in Washington, D.C., meeting with him, he pulled aside a gentleman that lives in his community and said, you know, you credit unions really put me over the edge. You really did this for me. And that was such a wonderful affirmation of what partisan communications can do. So we have now with us two representatives willing to talk a little bit about their credit union history, a little bit about what credit unions have done for them. It's great to have both a Republican and a Democrat. Thank you so much for sitting here civilly.
You bet.
I won't ask you to hold hands, but I appreciate it.
Sure.
So maybe if you guys could help set the stage, just a brief update about how credit unions helped and a little bit about your race.
Well, Tracy, I'll go first. I represent the 3rd District of North Carolina, and Kurt is a good friend of mine, by the way. We do have good friendships in Washington among both parties. But for me personally, I have been a credit union person since I have been a member of Congress going back to 1995. I joined the Wright-Patman Credit Union. I borrowed money from the credit union. I banked with the credit union. And my relationship has always been very positive. And then the credit unions in the 3rd District of North Carolina have always been very helpful to me, politically speaking, because I believe sincerely, I've tried to support legislation that would expand the ability of credit unions to expand their services. Nice. I very much believe in the credit unions, and particularly when you look at what's happened with the big banks on Wall Street, the credit unions, what I call are the people's bank as a credit union, and I relate to that. Last point very quickly. My chief of staff years ago said about Walter Jones, when he goes to the floor, I don't know how he's going to vote. Depends on the issue. He'll either vote as a conservative or a populist or a libertarian. And as far as I'm concerned, the credit unions are the populists, and I'm with you 100%.
Thank you. Awesome. Representative.
Well, I'm Kurt Schrader. I represent Oregon's 5th Congressional District out in the Willamette Valley and Central Oregon coast. And I just have a lot of respect for what you do. During the depths of this great recession we just got through, it was you guys that kept the credit lines going. Banks were in rough shape, and fees started to get popped up, as you all know, and I had a lot of folks wanting to come visit my local credit unions because you were there and still willing to help out, whether you're a small business person struggling to, meet your monthly payment, or, a person just trying to get by and, finance themselves through that tough time. And the credit unions were there 100%, and that meant a lot to me. As Walter and I are public officials, we're most concerned about the folks we represent and keeping the wheels in the cart through these tough eras that we go through. And it's something that you do naturally. I'm a veterinarian by trade. I worked in our state legislature. It's a part-time gig in Oregon, and worked closely with the credit unions back home. Some pretty contentious fights back in those days with the banking community, and proud to see the membership expand. And I think the people vote with their feet, whether it's coming to vote for Walter and I, hopefully, or voting to who to entrust their money to. And you guys do a wonderful job. And I can't thank you enough. I actually bank at the Congressional Federal Credit Union here in Washington, D.C., too. So you're a personal part of my life.
Great. Thank you. Thank you both. And what impact do you believe the credit union involvement in your campaigns had?
It was huge. I was challenged a couple of years ago with the big banks coming in against me, and I would say that the energy of the credit union was just, there's no way the big banks could touch the energy, because the energy are the people. Real quick story. Several years ago, I forgot what the issue was here in Washington, but the credit unions were on one side and the banks on another side. And at the time, our chief of staff, Glenn Downs, we were going to vote with the credit unions. And we got all these letters from individuals, not from the credit union itself, but from the individuals who bank with the credit unions. All right, so the person that represented the banks, my chief of staff said to him, he said, listen, we're getting letters from all over the district, from credit union members. Well, what he did was to go ahead and one letter, photostat, and send us 100 letters that were the same letters. And my chief of staff said, they ain't gonna get it, because Walter Jones is hearing from credit union members from across the 3rd District of North Carolina. You can, you are, and you can make the difference here in Washington.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's great.
I agree with Walter. And in this cynical era we now live in the hyper-partisan atmosphere, people are skeptical of any type of advertisement that smacks of Walter or I talking about ourselves. What is super helpful is having third-party validation from organizations that represent, as Walter said, the real people out there. That means a lot. When people are trying to size up, am I going to vote for Kurt Schrader or Walter Jones or, their opponents, what is going to push them one way or the other? It's about what other people say about us to the average person, the average voter. And to have an organization that has such widespread support in the community with all the good work you do in the community, the way you lend in the community, particularly to small business and individuals, you're highly credible. And when you came in on my campaign, it made a ton of difference. And you get those waning days of the election where a lot of the electorate is still undecided, trying to figure out which way to vote. This is the type of communication that's independently funded. Walter and I really have nothing to do with it. You do it on your own. That makes a lot of difference to folks. And especially, as Walter indicated, if it comes from your constituents. That means a lot to us when you communicate with us. It also means a lot to the rest of our constituents in the district when you're communicating like you do. So I think it's really critical that you continue to do that.
Thank you. So as we all know, credit unions as member-owned organizations, we have this, our members, our owners, can have partisan communications directly with their owners, just like any other business can, right? I mean, it makes sense. We can talk to our owners and we can say, hey, here's the issue, here's what we think about it, and here's why we would encourage you one way. You guys can imagine that that makes some people nervous. Yeah. Can you give maybe some advice as to why a credit union might want to get involved in that kind of a campaign?
Well, to me, the future of the credit unions, of being able to be the people's bank, so to speak, the people's credit union, depends on your involvement today. If I've seen one thing, I've been here 22 years, if I've seen one thing that changed Washington, it's the influence of money. The influence of money on policy, and it doesn't matter which party is in charge when I make this statement, It's my observation. I'm not speaking for Kurt. It's my observation. But, again, you are in the streets. You are in the streets because your membership are the people that live in the towns, the cities, and the communities where these other banks, primarily, talking about Wall Street and some of the national banks, they can't say the same thing. So politically speaking, you've got the power because you can be involved with that member of Congress. You can go to that member of Congress really in a matter of days or weeks or hours. You are where the power is as it relates to policy in Washington, D.C. That's why over 5,000 of you are here today. And I'm honored to sit here with Kurt and with Tracy to share some of my thoughts.
Thank you so much.
Well, in the real world of politics, the real world of the way our country's government works, your state legislatures work, is that if you're not helping set the table, you're on the table. You know, that sounds trite, but it's true. You have to get engaged. I'm a veterinarian. Veterinarians probably want to be the least political people in the world. You know, we just want to practice our craft, right? Save animals, work with the four-footed people that are at least honest with you all the time. But if you don't engage, we saw this when I was in the state legislature in Oregon. We had some well-meaning initiatives, worried about meth production, a big problem out in Oregon in my part of the world. And there were some precursors that they wanted to ban. And inadvertently, they were drawing in veterinary clinics by the way this legislation was worded. And that same thing can happen to you all too, sometimes by design, sometimes by accident. That's why you need folks in Washington, D.C. and in your state legislatures, and why we need you guys to tell your story back home. That's why you have to be involved. You don't want to, you just want to serve your customers, do what you do best, lending money, making sure people have access like they do now. But you've got to get engaged politically. The world is getting to be a smaller and smaller place, and you have such a great story, as Walter alluded to tell. Stay involved.
Great. Such great advice. So we have time for one more question, and that question is going to be tomorrow, and even today, I think some of you might have hill visits, but as we go up to the hill, what advice do you guys have for folks like us coming in to share our story?
Well, I'll be very quick. To me, most members of Congress, if they can personally be in the meeting when you visit their office, they're going to try to be there. Sometimes there are conflicts because of hearings and other issues that take you away, but what the member of Congress wants to hear is, quite frankly, what can we do to strengthen your ability to provide services to your customers, your members. Let us hear from you what you would like to see Congress do. It's not necessarily that it's going to happen, but let us hear from you. What can we do to give you the ability to take care of that customer?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. I agree with Walter, and I'd also say make sure to identify yourself as a constituent. I mean, that means a lot to Walter and I, or any member of Congress. If you're a constituent, believe it or not, we listen more to you than anybody else. Your lobbyists are great, but you're actually a little better, let's be frank.
Yeah, that's good.
And then secondly, stay in your wheelhouse. Some groups, in my opinion, I won't speak for Walter, but if you start talking about all these other issues, that really aren't in your wheelhouse as credit union members, members and their staff, their eyes will start to glaze over. You do a good job, frankly, historically with us in our office of staying on credit union issues. And that adds credibility because, again, I'm a veterinarian. I'm not a credit union lender. I don't know your business per se. I like what you do because I take advantage of it, but I need to hear your expertise. And so I'm looking to you to give me the information about what you're doing, as Walter alluded to help our constituents back home. And so stay in those areas. I think you'll do very well.
Perfect. So be engaged, stay on purpose, And for those of you who are interested in more information about how to get involved and how to get your members involved, please contact CUNA's Political Affairs. Get involved with MAPS, I beg you, because as Kat said yesterday, if not us, then who? And we will only have ourselves to blame if we do not elect and continue to re-elect credit union friends in Congress. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here, and thank you, Representative Jones and Representative Schrader. So fun to have you here. We appreciate it very much. Let them know that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate you very much.